Good morning. Yesterday, the city of Memphis released video of a brutal beating of a black man, Tyree Nichols, by the police, the murder. And so we're going to start just a few minutes early today with some quiet music to acknowledge and to create a sense of respect and honor for this moment. Welcome to Bellingham Unitarian. Welcome to Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship. I'm Reverend Paul Beckel. Yesterday, the city of Memphis released horrific video of police beating a black man, Tyree Nichols, to death in the face of that kind of horror, crime. How could anything we say, how could anything we do here today be enough? Obviously can't be enough to fix it. Can't be enough. I hope it would never, nothing could be enough to make us feel okay about it. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in his letter from Birmingham jail, he wrote to the white pastors in Birmingham and excoriated them for their response to his efforts. They said, no, you know, it's not the right time right now for disruption. And in some ways, you know, they were comfortable, they were safe. For them, it was not the right time for a fair and peaceful world. In the scope of enormous, you know, for all of human history, social injustice, what's enough? In our personal lives, we have such high aspirations, and that's wonderful. And what a paradox that it can't be enough. Well, I don't want you to leave today thinking we're never good enough. That's not at all the point today in pointing out that it is a paradox, but just to acknowledge, because I think it's useful. It's helpful for me to acknowledge my incompleteness and somehow in doing so, in finding solidarity and community in doing so, we find we still can find a sense of gratitude and possibility. So will you sing with me now our gathering song? It's number 1031 in the Teal hymnal. May I be filled with loving kindness. And the gist of this song, you know, it's so aspirational. You know, yeah, let's stand together. It's so aspirational. You know, even if it's a bit much to ask, you gotta ask. So we'll start by saying, may I be filled with loving kindness. And then in turn, may that empower us to be able to say to one another, may you be filled with loving kindness. And keep expanding that circle till may we be filled with loving kindness, because of course it's all inseparable. So. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. seated. Yeah, there's a mic there.
We gather today and light our flaming chalice of intention along with our faith community around the world. May we be accountable to loving kindness for others and for ourselves as we navigate each brand new day. And now please join me in saying our covenant. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service gives it life. Celebrating our diversity and joined by a quest for truth, we work for peace and honor all creation. This is our covenant.
So I'd like to talk to the little ones for a moment. Bigger ones can listen in because I don't assume anything about the little ones' capacity to take in big concepts. We try to put it in little terms because, well, we're talking about the UU principles today, and after decades, I still can't recite to you the UU principles. I could probably do the 10 Commandments better. But I love the principles song. Thinking about it today, though, of course, it certainly doesn't feel right to do this as a rah-rah parade song. But it can also be like a vigil parade song, depending upon how we sing it, how we use it to remind ourselves of what's important. So we're going to do it right now as a love song. I mean, hopefully always it's a love song. And like, I'm guessing that all of you have had love songs sung to you as lullabies, and you don't remember any of it. But you know what? You feel it, and it soaks in. And when it happens over and over and over, it soaks in and it becomes a part of you. So we're going to sing that way. And I'm going to maybe talk a little bit about, you can see how much you take in. I guess it's like Sunday services. Always. You know what? Let it seep in. And that's good enough. You'll be familiar with the tune. I'm not remembering the hand signals right now. So I'll say it slow the first time, and then we'll say it just a little bit faster. Sing it a little bit faster the second time. So it goes. 1, each person is important. 2, be kind in all you do. 3, we're free to learn together. 4, and search for what is true. 5 is cool because this is the number. This is actually is a number in one language called the ancient Roman numeral system. So that's vote, V for vote, and because vote means victory, and it also is a number 5. So helps me remember. 5, whoops. 5, oh, yeah, I forgot the note. Yeah, okay, then 6 I want to talk a little bit more about, because it's hard. It's hard on so many levels. 6, what's the first thing? Fair and peaceful world. Build a fair and peaceful world. Wow. Okay, it's a lot of words to remember. So we have the hand signals, fortunately. So there's 6 words in that. Build a fair and peaceful world. So if you count off on your fingers, it's a lot easier, because otherwise I get tongue twisted. But it makes me think too of, it's hard to build a fair and peaceful world. Sometimes I think about, okay, maybe it could be peaceful for some, but not fair for everybody. Or maybe it could be, or maybe it actually could be fair. Imagine the world were fair. Some people wouldn't be satisfied with that. I don't know how hard it would be for me to be satisfied with that. Could I be peaceful in a fair world? That's why all of this is aspirational, to say fair and peaceful. Because we can't assume that one entails the other. So anyway, build a fair and peaceful world, which of course takes two hands. So I can't remember the note though. Pardon me? 7, take care of Earth's lifeboat that will bring us back to me and you. You is, so this group we call ourselves UUs, or Unitarian Universalists. Those are big words. Easier to just go UU, or you know what? It's none of these words that really matter, or how you say them. They're fancier ways to say them. It's what they do for you inside. So if we say them over and over, I think they make a difference for us inside. So let's sing, not a lot faster. In fact, let's have little pauses after the phrases, because we don't want to go too fast. We want it to soak in. 1, each person is important. 2, be kind in all you do. 3, we're free to learn together. 4, and search for what is true. 5, all people have a vote. 6, build a fair and peaceful world. 7, take care of Earth's lifeboat that will bring us back to me and you. Thank you. And we have one more song to sing to you for those of you who are going off to your classrooms. A little parade music too. And we'll sing through this twice. We hold you in our love as you go, as you go. May your heart be at peace as you go. To nurture the spark of your precious life. We hold you in our love as you go. We hold you in our love as you go, as you go. May your heart be at peace as you go. To nurture the spark of your precious life. We hold you in our love as you go.
Good morning. I'm David Curley from the Black Lives Matter Ministry Action Team and from the accountability event that will happen after church starting at about noon. The 3 weeks following the murder of Tyre Nichols in Memphis have shown us that the brutality in a police force is not confined to actions by white policemen. And it also has shown us good leadership by a black woman, Chief C.J. Davis, how it is breaking the established pattern of protecting police from legal accountability. We understand events better because we have been learning about Black history. When Black history is fully included, American history becomes un-American. It challenges us to respond to the weight of all that needs reparation and to honor all those who practice resistance and can be our models. Still, how much do I owe to restorative justice? It's the question I usually do not want to ask. How much is good enough is the question I substitute. But do I mean good enough for the problem or good enough for me? Is there any way to reframe this question? Because it reappears time and again with respect to our most serious and intractable problems. I think of global warming, for example. How much effort is ever good enough? I've been reading about the Jewish tradition of Musar ethics, where the question becomes, what keeps us from being enthusiastically generous? And how can we build this capacity? Sometimes my generosity runs up against an inner, insistent, seductive voice that counsels me, be safe, be comfortable, not now, later, another time is good enough. We can learn to understand where this voice comes from in our lives and to notice how cleverly it works. Good practice recognizes our limits and the need to take care of our needs. It also increases our capacity. It is simple, orderly, habit-building, teachable, and rewarding. Perhaps we already know this ancient teaching of Jewish sages. A person who gives once 1,000 gold coins to a single worthy person is not as generous as one who gives to many worthy people 1 gold coin each. 1 gold coin each time on 1,000 different occasions. Why? Because the first person gives once and then feels that they don't have to give again. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Oh, and thank you, John. Wow. Wow. That's slick.
I often preach that we should use our gifts to the fullest. I often preach that we should acknowledge our limits. That's the gist of humility. Humility is knowing our limits and using our gifts up to the extent of those limits. However, what if we were unlimited? What I have found, I see this every day. Click here, and I get 50,000 articles that show me how I could solve racial injustice in just 5 steps. The information just keeps coming and keeps coming. Surely, that should be enough, eh? And yet, our lives are filled with failure. And I'm not talking about imperfection. I'm not talking about failures that teach us lessons, that eventually we fail and we fail and we fail until we learn a lesson or we get better or, we have a breakthrough. That's not the kind of failures I'm talking about. Our lives are simply filled with failures. No matter how hard I try, I might not be able to get to the toilet in time to not pee my pants sometimes. And maybe I'll never learn. But let's not leave here today abandoning all hope, abandoning one another, abandoning our determination to love. We can still leave here today and go to sleep tonight, despite our failures, with what Iris Murdoch, the British writer best known for her novels on the themes of good and evil. We can go on with what she calls a selfless respect for reality. A selfless respect for reality. All my life I've been struggling with this paradox. In the Christian scriptures as a child, I heard about the Gospel of Matthew where Jesus says, "Be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect." And that really flummoxed me in the context of so many other biblical phrases about forgiveness and acceptance and not judging. Fortunately, there's another gospel, the Gospel of Luke, that has another way of phrasing it, where it has Jesus saying, "Be merciful as God is merciful." So that's a very helpful way of framing it for me. And the context of this passage is that line comes right after Jesus' comments on loving your neighbor, where he says, "To those of you who listen, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that? Love your enemies. Do good to them and expect nothing in return." And yet, how do we tell Tyree Nichols and his family to turn the other cheek? How do we show mercy to those who killed him? How do we pray that they may be peaceful and at ease, that they may be filled with loving kindness, that they may be whole? I'm glad we can be together to give one another strength to make that prayer. We can't do justice to this topic in one conversation, but still somehow we can leave here with a song in our hearts. The tune to that song will vary over time. The tone will vary. It might be a song of gratitude or it might be a song of lament and agony. But either of those can be grounded in a vision for a fair and peaceful world. So let's keep singing together songs of solidarity, realism, and hope with what Martin Luther King Jr. called a sense of holy discontent. And let's sing together number 1053, "How Could Anyone?" And let's stand together. And, if you cry at all during this song, it's okay because other people will be filling in on the gaps that you leave. So I'm telling that to myself as much as you, but join me in that.
Well, I've noticed that setting intention, sticking to one's resolutions, and making lists is in the January air. And the more I've talked with people about this, the more I hear our collective pressures pour out about it. All of us from youth into retirement grapple with the contradiction between, like Paul said, the enormity of what we're facing in the world each day and what we can do in a day. Which leads to the question, at the end of the day, what helps you to accept what's left undone? And in context, being in part of the computer age, which is characterized by fast communication, which gets briefer and briefer and briefer until it's an emoji. The dilemma is, I mean, there's lots of great things that it puts us in touch with, but then the dilemma is when the time spent in the digital world influences my self-expectations. Why is this taking me so long? To feel like I have to hurry, to be more effective, to be more productive. And actually, to step back and think, to compare myself to a computer and its unlimited efficiency is as ridiculous as comparing a computer to a loving friend or caregiver. I don't want to work that way or live that way.
Yeah. You know, I too am really intimidated. I thought the World Wide Web was so cool at the beginning. But, you know, it's outcompeted me. I've always thought of myself as a creative person, quick on my feet, a good multitasker. Obviously, can't keep up with that. And now artificial intelligence seems on the very near horizon. I'm certainly not going to be able to compete with that. So I've thought that, well, what else? Well, okay, it's not that hard to figure out that relationships are more important than having all the right answers, especially if you have to dig the right answers out of 60 million hits. And just for one example, I thought about building relationships. Trust. Building relationships, I wanted to say, takes time, takes conversation. Sometimes you have to throw away the script. That's not always easy. No, I mean, you know that I usually have a script, but Sue and I have had enough conversations that we can trust each other on this. You and I have had enough conversations that a conversation can be good enough. So it's building trust with individuals, with groups, with institutions. I really believe that can be enough. I mean, it can certainly be better than having all of the so-called answers that we get from Google.
Trust is a perfect example because it doesn't fit in clock time, tick, tick, tick. It takes on a process of its own, and you have to be present and attend. It's not like just getting an answer to a question off Google. It's not like getting a task done. That's a one-off. A friendship, a relationship, a community is showing up again and again.
I absolutely agree with that. And there are some trusting relationships that I have developed, and I think we have to develop. The world is bigger than the 150 people that an ordinary human can relate to. So institutions, the one that most immediately comes to my mind is public health services. You know, I can't know how to fight disease on my own. Mm-hmm. I have to develop a relationship of trust with people who know a lot more than I do, going back to humility. Mm-hmm. So that's, I guess, one way that I try to cope with it.
Yeah. I feel like, back to that question of at the end of the day, what helps you accept what's left undone, that it's a balancing act of leading with passion and still attending to what needs tending. Because we all know the maintenance of life is very real. But if I make a list for the week, are my bigger goals and visions and values, are they on that list? Or am I marching down a list of the little stuff that needs taken care of? Can that list support my bigger, wholer self and who I want to become and what I want the world to become?
And yes and no. There's no...
Not to finish it, but just to be on the list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because our basic needs are important. We have to acknowledge that for ourselves. We have to acknowledge that for each other. And they can sometimes be mechanical. Mm-hmm. They can be more of a quantity, getting all these things done or getting enough of this or that rather than quality oriented. And I think, not that you can do without one of those, but if we could focus probably more on quality than I do.
Well, you said something in a past sermon that's become a personal mantra for me.
Oh, wow, I don't remember anything I've ever said in a past.
You said something like, in each day we can only give all of our heart, all of our mind, and all of our strength to one or two things. Now, so I take that to be like, that's the big picture in my day. And then I sort of stack the little mechanical stuff, like water going around the islands in a stream, like that gets done, but not in my prime time, not when I'm really, like, we all have those hours when we're at our best. And I try to focus that time on the big one or two things. And at the end of the day, if I can say, I attended at least one thing, and maybe I got a few other littler things done, and maybe not. It'll be on tomorrow's list.
Yeah, when Sue and I were first talking about this topic and thinking about using it as a Sunday service topic, I said I've heard this prayer where it's fairly easy to remember, although I have to think about it. The beginning of the day, you wake up and you say, whatever. Fairly straightforward. And then at the end of the day, oh well.
Except I think about the whatever as kind of like open to possibilities. Do you?
Absolutely.
Oh, not
And
like
then-
a whatever, like whatever, like I don't care.
Yes, good point. That's a good distinction.
Whatever. Anything is possible,
Oh.
and then we see what happens.
And then something horrible happens, and that feels kind of clueless. Easy for me to say when, sometimes I think I've got a roof over my head, I've got Netflix, I've got a boat, I've got perfect health and universal admiration.
I'm good.
What more could I want? That should be enough. But then none of that can make me happy,
Yeah.
not by itself. So I did see one thing. I'm reading this book. I think I mentioned this last week too, that I'm reading a book on aging that I'm trying to come to terms with. And it talked about happiness, or maybe it was a happiness podcast. Anyway, it said why we have all of these things or get these things done and still not be happy. And maybe it's because it's more important to us to be special than to be happy.
Special as defined outside ourselves, like by all these things, so you're...
It can be that, but when I said a minute ago that I like to think of myself as creative, I like to see myself as somebody who can do things no one else can do, or I don't know, just do things well
You
enough.
are.
Even.
We all are.
Thanks, but that's I think a pertinent contrast to say the difference between being special versus being happy, and I think it's a good reminder to focus on the latter. And I think that leads well to our question number 2, which is, how do you deal with it how do you deal with other people's expectations? They might think you're not enough.
That feeds right into feeling special, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
You and I talked a bit about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And we're all, or I will say most of us, are pretty well shaped by getting extrinsic motivation from very young ages. You remember gold stars? Happy faces on your paper, or grown-ups saying, oh, I love your picture, that's so pretty. Then you think, are they gonna love my next one? Do you love this one? Do you love this one too? And it so easily shifts from the intrinsic satisfaction of creating to what other people are gonna think. Are they gonna hang my picture in the school art show?
Yeah, is my post going to reach the top of everybody else's
How many likes?
Facebook feed?
Yes.
And to acknowledge that that's so brilliantly designed to addict us.
It brought back the gold stars in our lives as grown-ups completely with the like
Except
button.
on steroids. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as far as being special, why do I need that? It just makes me feel vulnerable. It makes me too focused on other people's expectations, and then when I'm vulnerable, I could lash out. I can, pull back and want to just hide, shut down, but it definitely, I'm not going to be at my best when I'm too outwardly focused. I mean, not that external or other people's expectations aren't legit. People can have legit expectations of me. Maybe I've made a promise to them. I need to understand and appreciate their expectations. Maybe they're under a deadline that I have a piece in helping them get to their deadline. So
Yeah, it sounds like you're not saying that you're not looking for living up to any expectations.
not that I'm not trying to have any,
Right,
zero expectations.
right.
Yeah.
But I think it is helpful to look at what's motivating us, what's the voice inside, and is it about something that's really important to us, which could include a relationship and those expectations that we want to live up to, or is it stuff like getting that kind of recognition that really isn't helpful, like just that popularity thing or like buttons or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if those expectations don't even exist, we assume they exist. Or if those expectations aren't legit, the ones I said a moment ago about promises or are legit. But sometimes people expect things of us that aren't reasonable, aren't our problem. They're their problem. I can't say that we ignore other people's expectations, just say, oh, that's their problem. But sometimes it is,
Have you ever had anybody say, why did you do that?
Exactly.
It's not
like,
really
why
a
didn't
question.
why didn't you go to X event or whatever?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one, I don't even know myself the answer to that question. And they don't even really want to know why. Having an answer isn't going to satisfy them. That's not what they're really asking. They're saying, damn it, you should have.
Yeah, it's to say, why didn't you do this
Right.
is more of an accusation, right, than a question.
It is.
And it's something that young children often get asked. Young children that are still learning how to get along with others. And they do something that's socially unacceptable, and a grown-up will go, why did you do that? Like you're a grown-up and you still don't know why. And they certainly don't know why. They're just confused in the moment. It would be more helpful, and even to ourselves, I think, to say, I noticed that this happened. What were you thinking? To really ask a question, yeah.
Yes, and to accept one another, to give each other the grace of not being able to answer that, sometimes because we can't, it's too hard, it's not relevant, or it's too complicated, it involves too many factors, but also because it's just okay to say, I didn't do what you want, I'm not going to do what you want, I
Yeah.
won't do what you want. No, it's okay to say no. It's vital that as a community or as friends, we, are able to accept boundaries like that.
Boundaries are huge. And I think it's so much easier to learn how to say yes than it is to learn to say no and be okay with that. Probably because we have to give up the possibility of getting those likes from somebody. The expectations.
I don't want anybody to feel like out in the congregation, to feel like they need likes. That's not what I'm going to ask right now.
So you're not going to go ahead with that buff website you were thinking about on Facebook? Just kidding. Just kidding.
No, I'm talking about there's the third question in your order of service.
Oh, yeah.
So let's ask them to respond, but always, and I think Buff has been so good about this when we pass the microphone around. that people have been brief, that people have spoken personally, not in vague aphorisms, not in, oh, other people should do X, Y, Z, but actually telling anecdotes about this is where I've struggled with whatever the topic is. And I've already forgot what the,
Oh,
so what
people
was
are
the
looking for the
question?
question. The
Yeah.
question is, any insights into what pressures you to feel not enough?
yeah.
It's a pretty wide open question, but just what comes to the surface, yeah.
Right, and on Zoom, I wish we could pipe in your voices. We can't, so I'm going to offer you an opportunity. I hope you will participate in this by typing a short message into the chat. Do you have any insights as into what pressures you to feel like you're not enough? So, yeah, I'll walk around with the microphone, or Sue will walk around with the microphone, and raise your hand if you'd like to take a shot at it. Please don't think you need or have the right answer. Just say what's on your heart.
I think I probably experience it as the paradox of how can I be most present for children and still go to work and earn a living? That conflict always feels like not enough in something or not enough everywhere. So I think that's probably the hardest, or at least that's the most gut-wrenching. The rest of them are, I experience as easier to answer, but the conflict between work and parenting is always really hard.
Hi, I'm Mark Allen. A big lesson for me that started in the late 70s is there was an enormous sense of conformity within the gay community in San Francisco. And I did not meet it, and I felt really left out. It took me quite a while, but right now, those conformities I've thrown out the door, and I feel free. And that's why I'm trying to keep on becoming the rainbow of Bellingham.
I'm also trying to make it up to the good even will, and I am appreciating very much the discussions and the considerations that are being considered regarding caring for yourself and others. Marion.
My big stumbling block has been comparing myself to others who in my mind are doing more and doing better than I am, and it's been very hard to shake off.
Hi, I don't know if it's feeling pressured into feeling not good enough, but I can feel not good enough if I'm not careful when I set goals or intentions for the day, and it's a big, long list, and I have neglected to think or look at them and go, how long is each of these things going to take? So I'm trying to be a lot more cognizant of that.
Hi, I am thinking about so I'm a school counselor and I have about 310 kids and I'm the only person in my role at the school. So what pressures me to feel not enough is that I can't, the realities of all the needs at my school. And, you know, sometimes people will say, well, you do the best you can or something like that, but it's hard to tell myself that when, you know, you've got kids that you know need something more. And so I think the realities of society right now, and all the needs of families and kids are just very, very high.
Hi, I'm Jim. I'm new here. I just feel pressured for not feeling enough as a in relation to my white privilege and sort of as a class, you know, how much, and sort of the fragility of like being called out, and I try to like be a good ally, but it's like too convenient to let myself off the hook, and so I know that as an individual I'm powerless, and that as a class I know I'm not doing enough. So it's not one that is easily answered, and I fear the facile absolution that I can give myself.
I'm Nancy, and I struggle with ADHD, and I'm a procrastinator. So at the end of the day, I feel, okay, you wanted to do all these things, and maybe you got 1 or 2 done, and I'm just working on accepting it and putting it on the list for the next day. And there's a very funny video called Age-Related Attention Deficit Disorder. So just go on YouTube. It's really humorous, and it reminds me of myself, but not quite that bad.
Maybe one more.
Hi, I'm Haven Silver. I come from a family of very successful people. My uncles on both sides of my family were very successful financially and professionally in medicine and law and chemistry. And even though I went through medical school and became a family physician, I never felt that I had met the expectations of my family. And so I left medicine about 15 years ago, trying to find my authentic self. And I think I'm getting closer and letting go of expectations, but I've got a ways to go.
Thanks, everyone.
So JC says, regarding insights into what pressures you to feel not enough, JC says, the voice of my inner critic, which perpetuates the critical narrative of my father from childhood. AH says, better understanding how our biochemistry affects us after reading a book, Habits of a Happy Brain, made it possible to work with it, not be controlled by it. Bonnie Finney says, the inner critic from a mother's narrative, completely internalized, a lifelong journey to overcome that voice. Jim R. says, choosing to work less than 40 hours a week, but always having to be available all week. And Pam Graham says, why can't I be happy all the time? I must not be good enough. What does Mr. Rogers have to say about all that?
Yeah. I'll just sit here. So recently I watched the Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood film about Mr. Rogers. And you may remember if you saw it, he asks for 1 minute to think of all the people who have loved you into being. To think of all the people that have loved you into being. And so I did that after I watched the movie, and as I wrote the names of those that have loved me into being in my journal, one who surfaced was my Aunt Dolores, who had been gone a long time, and I hadn't thought of her in years. But when I was about 7, she took the time to crochet for my troll dolls. Do you remember trolls? How little they were? She crocheted an entire wardrobe. I'm talking like two-toned bikini tops and skirts. And this just came back to me. And why? Because it made me think of all the time, the selfless, generous time and presence that each person on my list gave me in their own unique way. Now, there's a blank space in our order of service, and I'd like to do this together. And if writing it down helps you think, this would be a good time to get a pencil. If you want to just do it in your mind, that's fine too. Just get comfortable, and while Karen plays Fairy Tale, beautiful piece, let's take a couple of minutes and just think of all the people who have loved you into being.
Thank you, Karen. And I thank those who make music for us here. And some of the songs that Karen's doing today are her own compositions. The heart that you put into it, and others, and I mean in all the ways that you participate by when we pass the microphone. The heart, the trust that you have for one another is just remarkable. Let's do this responsive reading that's in the order of service. It came to me as a good one because we've been talking about lists and there being too many things to do, and so we have to make choices. So in that spirit, it's about choices. Your gifts, whatever you discover them to be, can be used to bless or to curse the world. The mind's power, the strength of the hands, the reaches of the heart, the gift of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, waiting. Any of these can serve to feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, praise what is sacred, do the work of justice, or offer love. And any of these can draw down the prison door, hoard bread, abandon the poor, obscure what is holy, comply with injustice, or withhold love. You must answer this question: what will you do with your gifts? Choose to bless the world. The choice to bless the world can take you into solitude to search for the sources of power and grace, native wisdom, healing, and liberation. More, the choice will draw you into community, the endeavor shared, the heritage passed on, the companionship of struggle, the importance of keeping faith, the life of ritual and praise, the comfort of human friendship, the company of earth, its chorus of life, welcoming you. None of us alone can save the world. Together, that is another possibility waiting. And as we do our collection today, we acknowledge, as always, we all have different limits. Our lives have their ups and downs emotionally and financially, and we do what we can. And we expect no more, and we are grateful for what we receive. Thank you for your generosity and all of the ways that you choose to bless the world with your gifts within this beloved community and taking the goodwill, the aspirations of this community beyond these walls. And you do in so many ways. And before we go, I have a couple of announcements. I want you to know that there's a table right outside the door for buying tickets to our auction. The details are in your order of service, but I particularly want to point out that if you can't come to the auction itself, you can buy raffle tickets in advance. And part of the auction is to buy chairs, individual for the sanctuary. We're not going to fill the whole sanctuary with chairs, but I think, whether we have 20 or 30 or 70, well, one at a time. That's how we get comfortable and build community. So I got to digress. Even if you can't come to the auction, you can buy a chair, $150 a chair, or 2 chairs, or I don't know. I'm sure more. And I had other announcements I have to remember. I know Barbara Gilday had one, and yes, Ginny, one of the things at the auction is that we're going to be auctioning off one of Ginny Baker's beautiful prints that are on the wall. Original. Oh, thank you. Yes, not prints. Thank you. Original paintings that are in the narthex on the wall, and you can help us decide which one there's instructions out there, but there's a framed thingy where you can put dots on to say, vote for which one you want to have auctioned. So, also want you to know that we're having a potluck next Sunday after the service, so please come. And today, after the service, again, acknowledging our limits. It's still important that we celebrate our accomplishments, and we have been working on so many anti-racist efforts over the last couple of years that we've tried to raise our consciousness around, and it's important that we celebrate the work that we've done. And so we're having an event at noon, at noon today in the social hall to acknowledge what we have done, as well as to have some interaction about what might be done next. So, thank you, Sue.
Nora Jones, The Long Day is Over, feels to me like an exhale of acceptance for the quality of one day lived. Feeling tired by the fire, the long day is over. The wind is gone, asleep at dawn. The embers burn on. With no reprise, the sun will rise. The long day is over.
Let's circle around for freedom. Let's have an inner circle and an outer circle, respecting one another's boundaries, making sure about holding hands, if that's desired or not. Knowing that we're imperfect in our circle making.